So, you want to become a Dragon Ball Power Scaler? Well, it seems you've come to the right video. Salutations everyone, Shadow Taurus here, and this is a new type of video that I want to try out. I call it Beginner's Guide to Power Scaling. Yeah, it's a bit of a long title. In this video, I'll be going over some things that are critical to know for people who are just starting out in Dragon Ball Power Scaling. There will be a few sections, these being canon, cosmology, and guidebooks. Now, each of these could have their own separate videos on the topic, so I'm going to be simplifying them to beginner level. But before the video starts, I do recommend you have a basic knowledge of what power scaling is before getting to the video. If you do not, I would highly recommend Surfthun's Power Scaling 101 videos, as they do an excellent job at explaining the core concepts of power scaling. So with that out of the way, let's get into our first section on what is Dragon Ball canon. Now, when it comes to Dragon Ball canon, there is a lot of different forms. There is the Dragon Ball anime, the Dragon Ball manga, Dragon Ball Heroes, all the different games, and the list goes on and on. So it's hard to narrow down what is canon, so the Dragon Ball Power Scaling community came up with this. The typical canons they use will be the Dragon Ball anime canon, Dragon Ball manga canon, and the Dragon Ball Heroes canon. These three canons are the typical types of canons you will see tossed around most of the time in debates. Now you might be thinking, but wait, the Dragon Ball anime is simply an adaptation of the manga. Why does it have its own canon? Well, that is because despite it being an adaptation, there are notable strength level differences between the anime and the manga. One of the prime examples in the Dragon Ball Z anime is when Goku and Vegeta were inside of Super Buu, they ended up fighting clones of Gohan, Gotenks, and Piccolo. And now it was stated in the Daizenshu, which we will touch on later, that they were just as strong as their original counterparts, meaning Super Saiyan Goku in the anime scales above Ultimate Gohan at that time, whereas in the manga this does not happen. Similarly, the Dragon Ball Z movies also fall under a similar category, as each movie is its own canon, due to Akira Toriyama stating that each movie takes place in its own dimension, so trying to scale them to the anime or manga is near impossible. Now, I did mention Dragon Ball Heroes earlier, and in essence, Dragon Ball Heroes is both a video game series, a manga, and an anime series, which spans throughout all the different official media for Dragon Ball. You will find GT, Super, the movies. If it's an official Dragon Ball source, you will likely find it in there. As well, it has some original characters of its own, and the series tends to get very absurd with its power scaling, but we will save that for another day. And that is how canon works for the most part in Dragon Ball. So now, let's go over cosmology. When it comes to cosmology in Dragon Ball, let's first define what cosmology means. The Google definition of cosmology is the science of the origin and development of the universe. So, in this context, we are talking about how the Dragon Ball universe functions. To give an example, let's talk about the Dragon Ball living world. A common debate is how large is the Dragon Ball universe in actuality. Main two are whether it is finite or infinite in size. Now, I will not chime in on this debate because it is not the point of this video, but cosmology is important for power scaling as it is useful for determining how powerful different feats are. Let's talk about Goku nearly destroying Universe 7. Depending on how big the universe is, it can change how impressive this feat is. If the universe is finite, then it would simply become a universal feat. However, if the universe is infinite in size, then it becomes what is commonly known as Universal Plus. Another example would be the afterlife in Dragon Ball. The Otherworld, as it is called, has a few different interpretations, one such leading people to believe it is a fifth-dimensional construct. This involves guidebook statements, which don't worry, we'll get to later. As well, even inside the living realm, there are multiple separate dimensions, such as the demon realm, which is stated to be in large part similar and just as vast as the living realm. Overall, the cosmology of Dragon Ball is rather vast and can be rather daunting, so do take your time when studying it. Now, I could be here all day talking about the cosmology, but we don't have that kind of time. So let's switch gears and talk about our final topic, guidebooks. Now, for our final section, we will be talking about a Dragon Ball Power Scaler's best asset, the Dragon Ball Guidebooks, or the Daizenshu. And yes, we will be calling it the Daizenshu. Now, the Daizenshu is a collection of multiple books that were made after the Dragon Ball Z manga finished its publication, aka the end of the Buu saga. These books give information on the series, characters, techniques, and circumstances. One of the most famous examples is the Daizenshu gives us multipliers for the Super Saiyan transformations. Another one is about how the Daizenshu talks about the Dragon Ball universe being infinite, as we discussed in our previous section. As well, the Daizenshus are not the only guidebooks for Dragon Ball out there, though they are the main ones people tend to use. If you were looking to scale GT, for instance, you would go to the GT Perfect files, and for the different Z movies, you might go to their different art books. There are loads of these for people to find and look into. However, I must warn you to only use the guides and the Daizenshu as supplementary evidence in debates and power scaling. Attempting to cite the Daizenshu without evidence in the series will get you debunked and refuted, so do be careful with how you use them. A common example is in the 4th volume of the Daizenshu. There is a statement about the other world that states, "Higher than the skies, a dimensionality transcendental heavenly country that cannot be perceived from the human realm. From this land the gods look down upon the world." Now, people attempt to use this to say that the afterlife in Dragon Ball is a 5th dimensional construct. But the problem here is that not only is this never supported in the series, but also transcendental only means relating to a spiritual or non-physical realm. So all that would mean is that the other world is a non-physical or spiritual dimension, which does not constitute 5D. As well, we could talk about how the living world and the other world should be causally linked, but I feel like that's a little too much for a beginner's guide. So this is why you need to use logic and common sense when looking at the guidebooks. But that is all we have for today's video. I hope you found it informative for all of you who are trying to get into Dragon Ball power scaling. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Until we meet again, good luck in your power scaling endeavors.